Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. I hope you all enjoyed a happy Mother's Day yesterday. And in honor of Mother's Day, today I wanted to pay tribute to Michael Learned and Ellen Corby, a couple of our favorite moms. Michael Learned. We all know her as Olivia Walton, the role for which she has become iconic. She is America's favorite mom, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many other people. But let me fill you in on a little bit of her background, because she has quite a fascinating background that many of you may not know about. So I'm going to just share basically her biography, because I can't put it any better than this. She was born in Washington, D.C., and at the age of 6, her family moved from New Jersey to a farm in Connecticut, a 21-acre glorious paradise for kids. And when she was 10, she stole some money from her dad, and by sneaking into her parents' bedroom while they slept, she lifted change from his pockets to buy candy. So her punishment was this chart that her father made where were listed various different chores that she could perform to earn back the money that she had taken. So she would get a quarter of a penny per egg she collected, as well as a penny or two for feeding and watering chickens. So this is, she milked goats, carried pig slops up to the barn morning and night, cleaned out stalls, and eventually paid her father back with money to spare. And she never stole so much as a matchbook from a hotel since that time. However, and this was something I was thinking as I read this, the experience would prove to be the perfect training for the role that would define a lifetime as Olivia Walton to the hit series The Waltons. So growing up on a farm around all these animals and stuff, she clearly had a personal understanding of what this life would have been. Perhaps not the hardship that the Waltons experienced during the Depression, but certainly that rural setting and having a comfort level around all of that. And also, as we continue here, the oldest of 6 girls. So she grew up in a family with a lot of siblings, so understood that dynamic as well. She was 11 when they moved to Austria, where her father worked for the OSS, later known as the CIA, and to live in a tiny village called St. Gillen. Anyway, their home was located on a lake surrounded by mountains where there were dirndls, went to local schools, learned to speak German, and basically lived on the first set of The Sound of Music. Life in the village even included puppet shows and singing harmony with friends while making daisy chains, and she loved it. I remember in about 2003, the Walton cast went to Germany when their classic TV station there wanted to relaunch the Waltons in syndication. And I remember Michael, although her German was rusty, she understood enough of it still to certainly impressed me when we went on some of the local TV shows or interacted with people. Things came back, the language came back to her, and she talked about her early years living in Austria. So from Austria, she went to boarding school at the Arts Educational School in Hertfordshire, England, primarily a ballet school. Her 11-year-old dream was to become a prima ballerina. However, to everyone's surprise, she won the Drama Cup, and at her teacher's suggestion, she focused on special drama instead of ballet. She was miserably homesick and cried night and day for 2.5 years she was there. Aw, I'm sorry, Michael. One of the teachers during a history class actually asked her to please cry a bit more quietly. At the age of 16, she went to the London School and completed her dramatic training. Upon her return to the States at 17 years of age, she married Peter Donat and had 3 children by the time she was 24. She had 3 boys with Peter Donat. As her marriage to Peter was breaking up, 15 years later, she moved to Los Angeles and landed the part of Olivia Walton in The Waltons, and it changed her life. It changed all of our lives, and having her play our mama for all those years created this incredible bond that we have to this day. So we know about Michael's years on the Waltons and how incredible she was as Olivia Walton, and the depth and the heart and the compassion and everything that she brought to that, and why I think we all fell in love with her and wanted her as our own mother. We wanted that kind of a mother in our lives. So after the Waltons, since the Waltons, Michael has become a 4-time Emmy-winning actress, 3 for the Waltons and 1 for the series she subsequently did called Nurse. She received a People's Choice Award and has been a 3-time Golden Globe nominee. On stage, she starred in Steel Magnolias at the La Mirada Theater for the Performing Arts, in the national tour of On Golden Pond, and in Lewis Black's One Slight Hitch. Other theater credits include Elizabeth the Queen at the Folger Shakespeare Theater, Edward Albee's All Over at the Gramercy and McCarter Theaters. She starred in the West Coast premieres of Woman in Mind and Hapgood, both for the American Conservatory Theater, where she was the leading lady for 3 years. This is what she was doing, I think, just before the Waltons. So she had this tremendous theater history. Her Broadway appearances include Gore Vidal's The Best Man and Wendy Wasserstein's The Sisters Rosenzweig, and recently completed a production of The Outgoing Tide. In Los Angeles, she appeared in Mary Stuart Picnic, A Month in the Country, at the Music Center. I mean, it goes on and on and on. She has done countless other film and television appearances, and recently she starred as grandmother in Dahmer Monster, that story, which has been one of Netflix's most watched miniseries. And Michael is now married to the wonderful John Doherty and has 5 beautiful grandchildren. So that is a all too brief overview of the life of the fabulous Michael Learned. Ellen Corby, Grandma Walton. She originated the role in The Homecoming, and then was the only one of the adult actors from The Homecoming who was continued on in the role when we did the series. So let's touch a bit on Ellen's career, which lasted her entire life. So she was born Ellen Hansen on June 3rd, 1911 in Racine, Wisconsin. She played many uncredited bit parts from the late 20s through the 30s, but she was not seen on the big screen until 1945 in Cornered. In 1946, she appeared in 14 films, although mostly in minor roles. Now, I do remember her talking about that she originally spent 11 years as an unpaid script assistant at Poverty Row Pictures before becoming an actress, that her mother prepared all the lunches for the staff. And she talked about being a script supervisor, and her attention to detail was tremendous because of that background. So all those scenes around the kitchen and that food, she just had an eye for matching all of that action, take after take. So that was her early beginning. And I think because of her early beginnings and Will Geer's, they had such an appreciation for the work because they had times where they had lean years. And so having a situation where they suddenly had this platform of steady work was a really big deal. She had not done a series regular role before. She had done a lot of guest spots. People have talked about all kinds of things they've seen her in over the years. But this was an opportunity to really be known and loved by millions and millions of people, not only in the US, but around the world. One of the early movies she did was the Christmas classic, It's a Wonderful Life. She had just a small role, but a pivotal one in the bank scene with Jimmy Stewart. And I remember hearing at one point that the director, before one of the takes, came over and gave her some sort of a suggestion, a piece of direction, that whatever it was that she did, and I can't remember the details, when she did that in the scene, it was a surprise, it was spontaneous, and Jimmy Stewart responded in just a wonderful, spontaneous way, and that was when he, I think, leaned over and kissed her.
All right, Miss Davis.
Could I have 1750?
Bless your heart, of course you can have it. You got 50 cents?
So those were wonderful little stories that Ellen shared with us about some of these classic Hollywood moments. One of the highlights of her career came about in 1948 in I Remember Mama as Aunt Trina, where she garnered a nomination for Best Supporting Actress. But unfortunately that Oscar nomination didn't catapult her career into more major films. So she continued in roles, mostly minor compared to some of her contemporaries, and then made her way into television. And time after time, she played parts that were real standouts in some of these shows. For instance, some of you have talked about the Andy Griffith Show, and where she was the ringleader of the stolen car gang. And then, of course, the Waltons was the ultimate peak of her career, and she won 3 Emmy Awards for playing Grandma Walton in 1973, 1974, and 1975. Then, sadly, she suffered her stroke, and we didn't have her with us for some time until she made that brilliant return in the episode Grandma Comes Home, in the last reunion episode with Will Geer and Ellen Corby both, before we lost Will during that following hiatus. To me, the work that she did after her stroke in some ways was even more impactful, because she struggled so with her speech that any line she said was an incredible effort to get out. And yet what she did with no words was amazing. And I've always said it was a masterclass in acting, that less is more. People can have whole monologues and convey less than I have seen Ellen do with no words. Some of the other things, little trivia pieces about her life that I found interesting and her career, was that she played Edgar Bergen's wife twice, once in The Homecoming and then in I Remember Mama. She was quoted as saying that her first acting job was in Twisted Rails, according to an article in 1985. To me, I loved, as I was looking into some of the projects she did, some of the things that I thought were fun was that she worked twice with Doris Day. I was a huge Doris Day fan, loved Doris Day movies, and that she had a chance to work with her twice in 2 of my favorite Doris Day movies, The Glass Bottom Boat with Rod Taylor, and I had the opportunity to work with Rod Taylor as a child in the movie Hotel. He rescued me from an elevator that was about to crash. And then she worked with Gordon McRae on Moonlight Bay, with Doris Day. She was Miss McCardle in the original film of Sabrina with Audrey Hepburn, Humphrey Bogart, William Holden. And so those were just iconic films from my childhood. So I knew of her long before I had the honor of working with her. And then once I started working with her, to me, she was Grandma, but more than that, she was Ellen. It's an interesting thing when you work with people, because you have your on-screen relationships, but those aren't necessarily the way you interact with your castmates off camera. So we had our Walton family relationships, and then we had our real life relationships. And Ellen was always very special to me. She really did mentor me in a lot of ways and gave me a lot of advice. I wish I'd listened to more of it at the time, but I think it sunk in, and perhaps better late than never. Some of the lessons I learned from her, I think, sunk in, and I began to appreciate more as years went by, as I think we often do with parental influences, our own parents, our grandparents, older people. When we're young, we tend to think, oh, I know best. I don't need to listen to them. What do they know? They're old. And then you get a little older and you realize that you do have a perspective that is well worth listening to. I couldn't wrap up a tribute to mothers without touching on my own mother, Connie. My mother grew up in England during the war, and so she told me wonderful stories about growing up, but she wanted to go to Hollywood, not because she wanted to get into the pictures, but she grew up watching all those movies like I talked about that Ellen did, and the musicals, and she came to Hollywood via a circuitous route, but became a singer then, sang with a band, and then, raised her children. And she was on the set with me every day of the Waltons, because after I was 18 and didn't need to have a guardian with me, she was a guardian to Cammie Kotler throughout the rest of the series. Sadly, I lost my mom about 10 years ago, but my love of the movies and musicals and everything were really because of my own mom. So, love you, Mom. Miss you. My mom also grew up as an acrobat. She and her brother did a hand-to-hand balancing act growing up. My grandfather had been a gymnast. He made the British Olympic team when he was young. Unfortunately, they had to pay their own way and he couldn't afford to go, so he didn't get to go, but he was a specialist on the rings. And from a very early age, he taught my mom and her brother this hand-to-hand balancing act, and they toured basically vaudeville in England from the time she was very young. And she did that till she was 16, and her brother decided that he didn't want to do the act anymore. But she just had this incredible upbringing. So I think the professionalism and the dedication and the show must go on and you do it no matter what was something instilled in her from the time she was very young from her father, and she instilled it in us. So that concept of, you just do it no matter what's going on in your life. Show must go on. So thank you, Mom, for those great lessons. That's what I have for you for this special Mother's Day tribute. I hope that you had a very good day with your own mom or mother figures. And I will see you on the next episode of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and some more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.